Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the second part of our workshop. I hope you're feeling very refreshed and energized because we have a really exciting and interesting session coming up, followed by our call of actions. And I also want to show my commitment today here to a cleaner and healthier Mediterranean. If we have any newcomers, welcome. And if you could just make sure that if your full names and institutions are displayed on your screens, that would be fantastic. You can do this by right-clicking on your name located at the bottom left of your screen and selecting the rename option. If you remember, just before the break, I asked you all, of the many policies and actions that are ongoing or are needed to reduce marine pollution, which do you think has or will have the biggest positive impact towards our fight against marine litter? And Professor Scully suggests that the formalization of policies, for example, on single-use plastic bans and on separate collection and recycling of plastics, through legislation with parallel establishment and enhancement of implementation, monitoring, and dissemination of information and mechanisms, are critical to help us make a positive impact towards dealing with marine pollution. So thank you, Professor. And thanks again, everyone. We're looking forward to reviewing all the information and the chats that you've put in throughout the day, more in detail after the workshop. So without delaying any further, we'll now head into our third session, Solutions to Reduce Marine Litter Pollution and Impacts on Biodiversity and Our Health, which will be facilitated by Tommy Vlachoiani. I hope I've said this right, Tommy, from the Mediterranean Information Office for Environment, Culture and Sustainable Development. Tommy is an environmental chemist and exotoxicologist with more than 15 years experience under her belt and has been involved in several transboundary projects addressing the whole management cycle of marine litter. We're delighted to have her here today to guide us through some of the solutions that may help us reduce marine litter pollution and its impact. Over to you, Tommy.
Thank you very much, Anushka, for these kind words. And I'm also delighted to be here with you today. Good afternoon to all our participants. I hope you really managed to revitalize yourselves. And I'm expecting of you to be very active within this session, to ask as many questions as you want. And I'm sure that this will fit into very constructive panel discussions. So this session, first of all, it was very interesting to follow all the sessions, in the two sessions in the morning, the one focusing on the science of the issue at stake and the other focusing on the governance and policy aspects. And within this session, we are gonna take things one step further and talk about solutions that should be implemented on the ground, practical solutions with the engagement of different stakeholders, and having them implemented at different levels, which was something that was highlighted also by previous speakers within the different sessions, because the main message is that marine litter is a no one size fits all problem, which means that it requires different types of solutions. And for that reason, we will have today with us different stakeholders representing different stakeholder groups that will be featuring their own stories, showcases with the different actors that they have engaged in their prevention and mitigation measures. I would like to say that in order to put some structure to our session, next slide, please. We have opted for clustering the different stakeholders into specific groups and the measures in specific types, which I will go into in 1 minute. But before doing that, I would like to introduce and welcome our speakers. One of the speakers is Ignacio Mateo. He is a project manager at ACP RAC. He's working with Magali's team, and he's also collaborating with me closely in the Plastic Buses MPAs project. His intervention will be focusing on operationalizing a very important measure dealing with single-use plastics and specifically with coffee to go cups, and you will hear about that in a few moments. Then I'm also happy to invite later on Laura Corredor Matias. I hope I'm pronouncing the names properly. She's a marine biologist specialized on marine litter, and she is working on participatory science and awareness-raising actions. The next speaker will be Lucille Curtial. She's executive secretary, and she's working on behalf of the Beyond Plastic Med initiative with companies. And I'm very much interested to hear how the BMed initiative is engaging the private sector in addressing the problem. And lastly, Josep Canals Molina will close the session by reflecting on how cities, Mediterranean cities and the municipalities can be engaged in addressing the problem, as he is representing, he's a Secretary General and representing the Med Cities network. So next slide, please. Here are the different stakeholder groups. We have there are different ways of clustering the stakeholders. Here we have opted of putting MPA managers at the heart and using the quintuple helix approach, where we have the MPA managers, then we have the different socioeconomic actors, which include NGOs, associations, donors, international organizations. We have the scientist group, the decision makers, and the citizens and the public at large. The idea of having a special group for the MPA managers is simply because the focus of our event is on biodiversity and habitats and species. And of course, MPA managers are at the forefront of addressing the marine litter problem and ensuring the effective protection of these habitats and species in the Mediterranean. Next slide, please. And when it comes to the measures, in order to sort of define better the different interventions and the scope of our discussions, we have deployed the Plastic Buses MPA's clustering of measures, where a large number of measures, either addressing land-based or sea-based sources, have been listed. And as you can see, this refer, for example, to promoting best practices for tourism and recreation, improving solid waste management practices, promoting the replacement of single-use plastics, banning specific activities, implementing awareness-raising campaigns, improving port reception facilities, enhancing upcycling or recycling. We heard a bit about that during the second session. Promoting extended producer responsibility schemes, implementing fishing for gear schemes, setting up derelict fishing gear management schemes, and also implementing cleanup and removal actions. And before moving on to the actual interventions, I would like to invite all participants to respond to our first Mentimeter question, which has to do with the type of stakeholder group you represent to. So as I said, we have identified 5 major groups, and please kindly indicate to which one of these groups you belong to. Don't be shy. I think that it would be great to see who is with us today. For sure, we have quite a few scientists, if we assume that all the scientists from the first session remained here with us. So let's see who else is with us today. So I'm happy to see that we have also a few citizens, which are not normally involved in this kind of events, which usually are on the science policy interface. And I would really be happy to hear their feedback on the things that we will be discussing here today. So the way things look like, it seems that the majority of the participants are scientists, followed by citizens and decision makers. So I don't know, I think that it's not necessary to stay too much on this. And perhaps we could move to the next question, if that's okay. And here the idea is for you to rank from 0 to 5 as an individual, your contribution to creating the marine litter problem. 5 is that you have extremely high contribution in generating the problem, and 0 that you are so eco-friendly that you are not contributing at all to the generation of the problem. Just 1 minute more and okay. I see that some people are taking up the responsibility when it comes to generating the problem, because actually this was the essence of this question, that oftentimes all of us think that someone else is responsible for generating the problem. And despite that, all of us, to a larger or smaller extent, play an important role in generating the problem one way or the other, even if sometimes this is not obvious to us. And maybe now we can move to the next slide, which is about who should take the lead in addressing the marine litter problem. Should the MPA managers be taking the lead, for example? Should the different socioeconomic actors, the scientists, the decision makers? I have a feeling that I know the answer that will come up, but let's see. Maybe we will have a different answer for a change. Okay, I see that decision makers are ranking at the top. And then the different socioeconomic actors, I guess, with their professional capacity, and including obviously the private sector, the citizens. Okay, I see that the decision makers, which is always the highest ranking reply that I get in this kind of question, which is true to some extent, but without wanting to be a party spoiler, nowadays, unlike the past, we have very ambitious policies in place. So the decision makers, to some extent, I'm not saying that they're off the hook, they have done quite a bit of work. So we have very demanding policies like the single-use plastics directive. And we have a very strong tool, at least from the NGO front. We're very happy with this tool that we can utilize in order to urge the different actors to implement actions on the ground. Obviously, the socioeconomic actors and in particular the private sector have a big role to play, but also society at large, the citizens. And I would dare say that also the scientists, who many times feel that they don't have that much to offer in terms of addressing the problem. In fact, they do. And I would like to echo what François Galgani highlighted earlier on in terms of the issue, for example, of recycling certain materials. Or, and we will touch upon this towards the end of our session, about the misconceptions spread out there when it comes to the solutions. And we will come to that later on. Next slide, please. So here, I would like you to pick the top 3 prevention and mitigation actions you think are the most effective and feasible to tackle marine litter pollution in the Med. These are the measures that I highlighted a few slides ago. So improving waste management practices. Second is banning specific items and activities, and promoting the replacement of single-use plastics. Okay, things are changing, interestingly. So now at the top, we have the banning of specific items and activities. which indeed can be a very effective solution, but also from experiences that we have had so far, when this happens in a rather, let's say, not well-prepared manner, then we might end up with alternatives that are less sustainable than the initial items used. So in general, we have to be quite careful when banning items, and this has to be well prepared, offering to the different stakeholder groups the alternatives, which should be more sustainable, obviously. So I think that the banning has ranked quite high, and then the improvement of waste management practices, and the I see now the promotion of extended producer responsibility schemes, that it's one of the most important measures identified also within the Single-Use Plastics Directive. Perfect. I think that we shouldn't take too much more time on this, and we can move to the session on the different interventions. I will start with my intervention. Next slide, please. Perfect. Yeah, just a few words about the organization that I am representing. I am a senior policy and program officer at the Mediterranean Information Office for Environment, Culture and Sustainable Development. And we are a federation of 133 NGOs from all over the Mediterranean. We have been working on the issue on many environmental protection related issues, but one of them has been marine litter. We have been working on that for more than 25 years, and we have been involved in a large number of projects and initiatives. But today I'm here to reflect or to present the Plastic Busters pilot action on establishing a single-use plastics free network of horecas, hotels, restaurants and cafes. Plastic Busters is an Interreg Med-funded project, Plastic Busters MPAs, which was presented in the morning by my dear friend and colleague, Cristina Fossi. She touched upon the monitoring and assessment component of the project, while I will be touching upon another major component of the project that lies at the heart of the project, and this is piloting prevention and mitigation actions. And I have to say that I'm really excited that in the last few years, more and more funding schemes and initiatives are requiring the implementation of pilot actions when it comes to solutions in tackling marine litter. And it's not just about enhancing the knowledge of the problem or just providing policy recommendations, but rather also moving on to the actions on the ground. So within Plastic Busters, we have 9 pilot MPAs engaged into operationalizing measures. We are testing 5 types of measures. So far, 2 of them have been completed, one of which will be featured by me. And also we have already identified 4 MPAs willing to join the transferring phase. Next slide, please. So in the Plastic Busters, as I said, we have different types of measures identified. Here you can see the types of measures that are being piloted. And next slide. And the measure that has been completed and is presented here with has to do with the engagement of small, medium or bigger tourism related businesses who are willing to adopt best practices to reduce significantly, or even in some cases, eliminate single-use plastics by voluntarily registering to a network of businesses and obtaining a certification. Next slide. So we have organized this kind of activities around several methodological steps. And one of the main outcomes of this activity is to have guidelines on how different types of measures could be operationalized in order to facilitate a replication in the Mediterranean basin, but beyond, also in other European regional seas. And for this particular measure, the first step has to do with engaging the different businesses and signing a SUPS-free HoReCa commitment. This is just about their commitment to join this effort. And one of the most fundamental steps has to do with the elaboration of an audit on the use of single-use plastics. This is a very important step because upon the findings of this exercise, the single-use plastics reduction targets are being identified, as well as the different measures to achieve them. And this, of course, has been done in close collaboration with individual businesses in order to have a tailor-made approach on how they can achieve these targets. The next phase entails the implementation of these measures and a careful monitoring and evaluation of the progress achieved in order then to be awarded the certificate. And of course, the certificate is, and the continuous, let's say, implementation of the measures is being closely followed by our project. Next slide, please. So this approach within the Plastic Busters has been firstly tested in Slovenia, in coastal Slovenia, even though the coastline of this country is relatively small. Single-use plastics are one of the most frequently items found and are a major problem. And we had the opportunity to work together with the Landscape Park of Strunjan. And here you can see the testimonials from the local actors involved. For example, the project manager at the Landscape Park Strunjan highlighted that this action provided a blueprint for concrete in-the-field actions. And despite the difficulties that were encountered due to the COVID-19 limitations in terms of stopping the use of single-use plastics, also the timings when it comes to the tourism season, this was a success story, and more businesses are continuously expressing interest to join this initiative. And this initiative highlights the fact that a lot of different actors in the private sector at local scale are willing, this is my last slide, are willing to join in and are very committed despite the obstacles that might be encountered. And here you can see the first business that received the certificate, and there are more to follow. And actually this activity is implemented in other Mediterranean countries within the scope of Plastic Busters. And with that, I would like to close my intervention. This was just a pitch of the type of action that we are implementing. And obviously, I will be happy to answer any questions later on. But without losing any more time, I would like to pass the floor to our next speaker, which will be Ignacio Mateo. Ignacio, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Tommy, and thank you to the colleagues of the biodiversity protection community to give me the opportunity to introduce one of the measures to tackle marine litter that we will implement this summer in the framework of Plastic Buster MPA's project. The measure I will present is an example of promoting the replacement of single-use plastics. And the place where this measure will be implemented is the delta of the Ebro River, that it's one of the biggest rivers in Spain. It's a very fragile ecosystem, and it's a mixture of wetlands and rice fields. Next slide, please. Which is the objective of the measure? We want to reduce the use of single-use cups. You can see here pictures of the day after festival in one of the municipalities of the Delta, and you can see a lot of single-use plastic cups that will probably end as marine litter later on, because the wind, because these municipalities are next to the river, or in the case of this measure, if these cups are used in the beach bars, they can finish as marine litter. How can we reduce the use of single-use caps and the problem that they produce as marine litter? The measure is to setting up a reusable cap distribution system in beach bars and festivals that are organized in the municipalities of the Delta. How it works, these measures. The beach bar will be supplied with these reusable cups. Then they will serve the drink to the customer, and they will, the customer will pay a deposit of €1. And then after, when they will return the cup, they will, the beach bar will bring back the deposit to the customer. Next slide, please. Which are the main lines of action? One of the things that we are organizing now, because the demo will be implemented this summer in July and August, that is the touristic season there, is to define all the logistics requirements for the establishment of this distribution system. In the case of the beach bars, they are in 5 different beaches, and they are far from the municipalities, and we have to organize all the collection, storage, and washing of these cups. Because one thing that I didn't mention is that we will install a dishing machine to wash these cups and then return the clean cups to the owners of the beach bars. The other thing that we are working now is to engage the beach bar owners and the festival organizers. We have done the first meeting with the beach bars owners, and we have two kind of reactions: the beach bars that are very proactive and enthusiastic, and the beach bars that are not so enthusiastic with the measures, because they think that customers will not like this reusable cap system because the COVID situation. I will talk more later about this. Then we are also start working in a tailored made communication materials and communication campaign to announce this measure in all the municipalities of the Delta. Regarding the festivals, we are still we have to decide the 5 festivals that will participate in the measures. The thing is, with the COVID situation, a lot of municipalities, they still don't know if the festivals will be organized. But I think now we have engaged a big festival, a big dance festival that is very famous in the area, and we are with the municipalities discussing with which are the festivals that will participate in the demo. Which are the expected
Ignacio,
results?
if we could ask you please to wrap up. Thank you very much.
Okay, the expected results of the project. Well, at the end is to reduce the amounts of single-use caps that are discarded in the Delta, and to strengthen the capacity of owners of the beach bars and festival organizers to minimize or to ban the single-use plastics. Next slide, please. And the main challenge that we are facing, well, it's, as I explained before, the concern of the beach bar owners in relation to these reusable options and the deposit, the situation about the COVID and the definition of festivals, and the logistics, regarding the logistics. Next slide, please, and I will finish. So if you want to know more about these demos and the other demos of the Plastic Busters MPAs project, you can visit our webpage sections on demos. You can subscribe our Plastic Busters MPAs newsletter. You can send me an email, or you can follow us in the social media. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ignacio, for this very interesting intervention. And now feel free to ask Ignacio questions in the chat room while we move on with our next speaker. And I would like to pass the floor to Lucille Cortial from the BMED Initiative. I hope, Lucille, I'm pronouncing your last name properly. Nice to have you with us today.
Yes. Thank you very much. That's amazing. Can I have the next slide, please? So today I'm going to talk to you about the BMED Business Club. So the goal is really to engage the private sector into the fight of plastic pollution. So we're targeting companies from all around the Mediterranean Sea which have a wish to contribute to this fight. And we have two main lines of action. The first one is to provide information to the companies so that they can use it into their plastic strategy to reduce their plastic footprint. And the second action is really about getting them together to work on collective concrete pilot project on the ground. In this business club, we are working with these big companies from all around the Med, but we're also working with a scientific committees, so different committee, so different experts on different thematics on plastics. And we're also working with the funding member of BMED, which are foundation and NGOs that bring to the table their own point of view. Next slide, please. So we've started this business club a year and a half now ago. It was at the beginning of 2020. And we have two main results. The first one, we managed to organize a working group that created dialogue between the scientists and the companies. And they're discussing different thematics in order to talk about the false solution or actually the right alternatives. And this dialogue actually already came to improve some of the company's strategy. I have an example. One of the company had built his strategy on the recycling of its items, but then with the discussion, they realized that the products that they were selling with were not actually recycled in the real life. And so they changed, and they are now working on their strategy to be more about reducing the amount of plastic that they're using and using only one type of plastic. The second type of action that we are leading now is developing and building pilot projects. So pretty similar to what Tommy presented on the HoReCa sector. We are working with a pilot hotel to reduce the use of single-use plastic. And the idea here is that all of the companies that are members of the club can bring their solution and their expertise and experience to the table. So for example, working with so the pilot hotel, but then other hotels that can bring what they did in their business. We're also working with cosmetic companies that can bring the solutions to the single-use plastic component in the hotel rooms. We're working with Veolia, for example, for the end of life of the different plastic, but also with Nestle for the restaurant parts. So you see, all of the companies can bring their part to the fight, and we are trying to involve all of the local stakeholders, so municipality, the region, the local NGOs, the scientists, and the companies to work together on this. Next slide, please. So if I take a step back on what we did, we already have 10 multinational corporations that had joined the club, so it is pretty nice start. We really created a dynamic. The companies are eager to share and really motivated to work with the others. We created collaboration, namely on that pilot project I was just talking about. And we saw, as I explained, really concrete example of use of the different information that we provide. We're also facing quite a few challenges. Well, first of all, when working with the economic sector, obviously you need to find the right balance between the efficiency and the sustainability of the solutions that you want to implement, but also the costs. So that's one of the challenges. We also have a cross-sectorial approach, and it's sometimes pretty hard to find the right way to make them collaborate. We want to have an impact at the Mediterranean scale, and so we are facing multi-languages companies, which is sometimes hard for them to communicate. And we also have different level of knowledge and environmental ambition for the companies. So we need to find also the right balance between going into details for the most advanced company, but not too much, not to lose the others. Next slide, please. And so finally, if I sum up and see what we could do better, well, scale up the activities is pretty obvious. You see on the map the companies that we are working with right now. So we need more countries, we need more sectors, and replicate the project that we have. We also need to create more interaction with local stakeholders. So we're working with different NGOs from all around the Med, and we think it is important for them to dialogue with those big companies. And finally, we need to be more ambitious, either about the company strategies, but also define concrete objectives on reduction of the plastic footprint. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lucille. I really like your concluding remark that we need to be more ambitious, and also the private sector should be more ambitious in terms of selecting suitable solutions and operationalizing them. I will quote on you. I will quote you on that. So with that, I would like to go to our next speaker. And our next speaker is Laura Corrado. She works for Oceanitas, and her intervention will be addressing the participatory science or citizen science and awareness raising actions. So Laura, please go ahead.
Thank you, Tommy. Well, my name is Laura, as she said. I am a marine biologist, and today I'm here to talk about Marine Rangers Network, an NGO which I am part of, and it's involved in conservation in so many ways. So here we go. Next slide, please. Next one. Well, Marine Rangers Networks organize beach and underwater cleanups. Those are carried out at the same date in numerous points of the Spanish coast. The real responsibles for those activities are the volunteers from the local diving clubs, being the ones that really organize the cleanups in their area. Sheltered by us, by the organization, the network contributes by giving greater visibility to their movement. Therefore, by holding these events at the same time throughout the country, our work has a greater media impact. The media become, as we said, our loudspeaker, reaching more people to raise awareness about the problem of marine litter. Marine Rangers Network was born in 2015, and since then this project has managed to cross borders, and now we are present actually internationally in Colombia, Brazil, Cape Verde, or Peru. You can click next, please. Next. As you can see in some pictures, but basically we are diving diving people. Okay, next slide, please. You can click next, so the pictures appear. Next, yeah. Our marine cleanups do not only serve to remove tons of waste from the sea and raise awareness among the population. As you can see in the first pictures, we also contribute with the scientific community by categorizing, weighing, and locating each item that we remove from the sea. Thus, we make what is called citizen science. All this information is updated into the database of the Spanish Ministry for the Ecological Transition through Marnova mobile application. And with our work, we help to collect really valuable data that help scientific people and governmental figures to understand the origin and the typology of the marine litter, something that can be very useful for establishing environmental conservation policies. It will be also useless just to remove marine litter from the sea without trying to raise awareness, of course. So associated with our cleanups, our volunteers develop workshops and conferences in order to explain careful with our environment. We hold those workshops in local schools and education centers where normally beach users and children are our target audience. You can click next. Thank you very much. We also believe that anyone can be a marine ranger because we all owe a lot to the sea, and everyone without limitation can contribute to its conservation. For this reason, the Marine Rangers Network is committed to inclusion and to highlighting the special capacities of each person. We collaborate with different entities of people with disabilities using our passion, which is recreational diving, to make them interested in marine conservation. In addition, we participate in numerous actions aimed to help people with limited resources, such as crowdfunding initiatives and food drives. And we contribute also to medical research by donating completely our crowdfunding campaigns to associations like Overcoming Cancer Association. You can click next. We also have a very cool project related with labor inclusion that you can see in picture number 2. During our cleanups, we find a lot of fishing nets, and with the awesome job of a group of elderly women, they are experts in traditional sewing. So we reintroduce those harmful marine litter items to a new production cycle and useful life. Those, let's say, net bags are the ones that divers use to collect the marine litter from the bottom. Thus, we are reconverting waste actually to collect waste, while we are helping people, of course, economically. You can click to the next slide, please. Since we started, we have gathered more than 2,000 volunteers, and we have collected more than 30 tons of marine litter from our oceans. Our presence, as I said previously, is national in the Spanish territory, but also international, having delegations in Peru, Colombia, Cape Verde, and Brazil. And also we have done hundreds of workshops and appear in uncountable media channels such as TV, radio, newspaper, social networks, etc. You can click next. And well, about the future, we believe that it's mandatory to make people understand that cleanups are cool, but they are not the solution. Such an effort can be much more useful if we also help the scientific community in data collection. Thus, we truly believe in training people to work as volunteer researchers and samplers and give voice to citizen science initiatives. Also, although we normally have help from the local administrative entities, sometimes it's difficult for us to get all the help that we want. That's why we will keep making some noise and pressure until everyone understands the importance of what we do. And finally, and of course, making the network grow in all aspects is one of our goals. So if anyone have any doubts or wants to join, now it's question time. And thank you very much for being here listening to me.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much for this very inspiring intervention. It's always very exciting to see, underwater activities. It attracts a lot of attention. And I really like that you highlighted the fact that the cleanup and, removal actions are not the solution to the problem, rather in the per se, the solution of the problem, but they offer an opportunity to raise the awareness, to engage people, to get them off their sofas, get them on the field. And also it's a very powerful tool for generating data. And I really liked also the fact that you are in close contact with Marnova and I guess Pilar, which for many years has been working on the issue of collecting harmonized data for the purposes of the MSFD. So with that, I would like to move on to our last speaker, which seems to be the only man of our group of speakers. So gender balance maybe not be the strong aspect of this panel, but nevertheless, we would like to welcome you and Josep, and pass you the floor to give us the talk about how you are transferring zero pollution solutions to the cities, to the network of cities that you belong to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bon dia, good afternoon. Let me say, first of all, that I think it's the second time that I am the only man on a panel. So that I think this is a good thing, because maybe it's balancing all the rest of the panels that have been the other way around. Let me start with showing you this, and I'm very glad to show you. 10 years ago, I was the mayor of my municipality, and we were renewing our contract on waste management, and we decided to make a campaign of prevention. And this is for the Festa Major that we call in Catalan, which is the festival that in the patron days we do in Catalonia. And it says, "My God," is like a play game of the words. God in Catalan is a glass, and we were playing with the words. It's just to illustrate that municipalities had been doing work on this regard for many years. And that's why I congratulate also the initiative of Plastic Busters and the Catalan government on the Delta Ebra, because it's very important to reduce this. But it is very important that to say that, and maybe afterwards, later on the discussion, we can talk who is responsible the most. For me, it's citizens by far, not administrations, not enterprises, but maybe we can discuss this later. Just to say that cities, we play a crucial role in this, because as you know, between 70 and 80% of the litter that we have in our Mediterranean and in the oceans in general are from inland sources. So the most of those litter generated litter are from cities, of course, because where the majority of the population. Maybe hundreds of kilometers inland, and firstly on the rivers. So in cities and local authorities, we think that we can do a lot on, first of all, because we are closer to the citizens, and we can raise awareness in a better way. And secondly, because the sum of us can do a better impact, I think. Of course, we need the resources, we need the competencies, and we need the help of the states and the sub-state administrations. But it's very, I think that it's crucial, because we can work closer to the civil society, the organized civil society, like the last one, La Red explained the interpretation before, and there are many initiatives like this that I congratulate also. There is fishermen also that are cooperating. There is an example also here in Catalonia, the Pescaneta, clean fisheries, that the sector of the fisheries, some fisheries, small fisheries, are aiding to recollect marine litter also, and with research centers. So the local authorities, I think that can play this role. We Med Cities, we are an association of 63 Mediterranean municipalities and union of municipalities that we like to help each other in issues like this, and how we can reinforce our competences and our capabilities to solve these kind of problems. In our guiding principles, you see these. You see them here: sustainable development and climate crisis mitigation and economic and social equality, because of course the social aspect is linked, is a part of the three elements of the sustainability. And we, of course, we have a general guidance, homologated guidance or common agenda with the Agenda 2030 and the 17 SDGs. Sustainable Development Goals. We are a platform project. We make big projects like the one we are involved now, Biodiversity Protection Community, in which we lead the communication phase. But I want to congratulate all the people involved in this session. It's very nice. It's very good. And let me do it especially to the Mid-Cities staff, Mireia, Carolina, but for all the involved. We are working in direct projects like biodiversity protection, as I said, and sustainable mobility and circular economy, for example, involving cities from our network and outside our network. We need in every project, we feel that we need to engage and to make cities involved, because, as I said, they are closer to the citizens, and we think that it's very needed, because as has been said, the problem at the ocean is too late. The problem at the coast is too late. We need to close the tap. I know my words. I like a lot this sentence. We need to close the tap inland. So the cities, we can prevent, we can make a communication, we can make efforts, and we can lobby to the national and the states to help us. The next one, please. We are putting in practice several projects in Lebanon, for example, to driven awareness campaigns, cleaning action campaigns. Of course, I've been working as an expert also in several campaigns for half of my life, and schools are very needed, are essential. The future, the changing of the mindsets regarding the use of the way we consume, the way that we are consuming. We consumers, we can change a lot of trends. So schools are very important. So we did it also in many projects related, like strategic plan, different layers from direct actions to strategic planning. We like to be involved in these different scales. Cities in great projects, as I said, interrelated projects and technical assistant actions and projects and planning. Socioeconomic inclusion through plastic waste valorization in Navel, for example. There is a lot in the Mediterranean region, a lot of people that is earning money, that is making a way of living the recollection of waste. We have to improve the quality of the works. We have to give them safety. We've got to give them capacities in order to dignify their work, because their work are so important. Every single plastic that they recollect, this plastic is not in the ocean. So it's very important. The next one, please.
Joseph, if I could ask you, please, if we could wrap up. Thank you.
Okay, and the last one is a strategic projects, like the one that we like to show, the Asima Tunis project, the capital of Tunis. We are fostering a 4-year program, a multi-level with all the participation of all stakeholders in Tunis. And one of the main phases is how to improve the waste management in all the Grand Tunis. We are doing also alliances, because we want to be a political platform to defend the role of the cities in the Mediterranean Cooperation Alliance, for example. Because, and I conclude, all this tremendous amount of work that you are doing, the specialists, the professionals you are doing, is not achieving the general public. We need to achieve to the general public. We need to mainstream. We need to spread the messages, the word, to change behaviors. We are late. We need to run up, and we the cities are prepared to do that. One example is the Enceres project, and we want to, and we've been awarded to this project, to how we can approach and effectively realize and make an integrated management, coastal zone management, and MPA management surrounding the cities. So it's very important that the local stakeholders are involved to solve and to tackle this great challenge that we have in front of us. So thank you very much. Maybe we can discuss later.
Thank you very much, Josep. I will just, I kept one of also my favorite sentences, phrases, which is closing the tap when it comes to the releases of marine litter and plastics into the marine environment. And considering the fact that we are running a little bit behind schedule, but we will make an effort to be on time, I would like to move on our little panel discussion, focusing on 2 major questions. And the one has to do with false solutions and misconceptions, and whether you have come across any, or when you encountered them, how you dealt with them, and what has improved as a result of your actions. And the second question has to do with the activities of your work helping to reduce the impacts of marine litter and the lessons learned. And I would like to pass the floor to Ignacio, whom before I, by mistake, forgot that to include as a member of the panel, in the sense when I was talking about gender balance. So Ignacio, I'm really sorry.
And me.
We are most balanced, actually, panel. And as a small apology, I give you the floor so you can start sharing your views on the two questions at hand. Thank you.
Hello, I'm the other man of the panel. And well, regarding the false solution and misconception, and I think, Tommy, you are agree with me. I a lot of time have the sensation that people want to, in the case of the single-use plastics, they will change the plastic for another material that they say it's compostable or it's biodegradable. But at the end, I consider this as a false solution, because this material is not compostable, or it's only compostable at high temperatures or in industrial installations, and is not compostable in the environmental or in beaches or in. So I think this is an important thing to think about when we think about the single-use plastics. The solution is not to change to these false materials, is to rethink the way we consume. We need to eco-design and to make more effort in the prevention. And for example, in the case of straws, they are really necessary for the beach bars. So this is one of the things that I will to comment about these false solutions. And
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ignacio. Indeed, I think you touched one of the most, let's say, highly debatable issues nowadays, which I'm happy to see that slowly the awareness is increasing on these misconceptions. And this is clearly demonstrated also in the discussions that we have been having within the Barcelona Convention framework and the updating of the regional plan, but also within the Single-Use Plastics Directive and the recently released guidelines of the European Commission on how to operationalize the Single-Use Plastics Directive, where, for example, compostable solutions or biodegradable solutions, they don't make real sense, in particular when you don't have a composting scheme, because this compostable materials don't vanish magically. And also when the idea of replacing single-use plastics with plastic-coated single-use paper cups, for example, is clearly demonstrated by the latest guidelines of the European Commission that it's not a solution. So thank you very much, Ignacio, for this very important issue addressed. Is there anyone else who would like from our panel to take the floor and highlight a false solution or misconception that you frequently encountered in your day-to-day operations? Perhaps Lucille?
Yes, thank you, Tommy. So if I can say something about what you said about single-use plastic and the materials, if I may, the companies have really huge difficulties on finding the right solutions to those items, and they're often misunderstanding what is at stake with the different materials, and bioplastics was one of the topic that we had in our dialogue between the scientists and the company. So to me, it is really an important matter to address and make sure that everybody understands what is at stake. And the second one might be the recycling. So often recycling is presented as one of the major solutions to reduce marine litter. And yet the reality of the systems that are existing is not that easy. And we know that plastic is really difficult to recycle. And maybe the solution is not to develop more or new systems, but rather to actually improve the efficiency of the systems that are already in place and make sure that the products that we are putting on the market answer the different technicity of what we need to enter them in the system. So I think that's the two major topics that we're addressing with the companies on regarding false solution or misconceptions.
Thank you, Lucille, for highlighting and the issue of bio-based plastics. That first of all, there has been quite some confusion about compostable plastic versus bio-based plastic. Sometimes people think that these are synonyms, which are not. Just to clarify for our audience that bio-based or bioplastics are just plastics where instead of being produced from petrochemicals, they're being generated by starch or other materials. So when it comes to their chemical composition, basically, they can be exactly the same as the conventional plastics, and therefore they don't offer any solution when it comes to the problem of marine litter. Maybe they offer a solution when it comes to the use of renewable resources, but this is again quite questionable in the sense of considering monoculture effects or water needs in the Mediterranean for these monocultures or even pesticides. So it's quite a complicated issue, which we cannot obviously address within this session. And the second most important thing that you highlighted is, yes, indeed, oftentimes when we talk about marine litter, everybody says, yes, recycling is a solution. Yes, this is part of the solution after we eliminate the use of certain, or we ensure that things are reused. And then indeed, we can talk about recycling. And oftentimes nowadays, actually recently I attended another panel where there was an actor discussing about best practice solutions and mentioning that creating new materials where there a blend of different polymers can be a solution, while this in fact makes things even more complicated. I mean, we have enough polymers out there. We know that some of them can be recycled easier, others cannot be recycled in such an easy manner. And the only thing we need to do is to simplify our lives and not introduce new materials on the market to make things much more difficult. So I think that this is one of the most important take-home messages. And Laura, I would like to pass the floor to you to share your thoughts on the issue.
Well, about false solutions or misconceptions, let's say that we in the Marine Rangers Network, normally people approach us while we are doing our beach cleanings, and of course seeing 100 of divers going out from the sea, the first question is, who is paying this? Is this the city council or is this the governmental? That is not, and that we are doing this just voluntarily. And there is when they say, but why are you cleaning? Is it your trust? And we say, no, it's not my trust. Also, it's not your trust. It's not, but it's our trust as a society. So actually, these kind of things, the misconception that we find in Marine Rangers Network is that these kind of initiatives need to be done by volunteers, and we have to explain this to the people because sometimes administrative entities do not do it as much as they could do it. No, so we have to make understand people that we do it voluntarily because us as divers can go to 10 meters deep, can go to 5 meters deep, where the marine litter it's in the shores. But we have to be quick because otherwise that trash is going to go to the open sea and we cannot do anymore. So that's one of, for example, the misconceptions that we sometimes have to explain to the people, that we are not being paid, we are volunteers, and sometimes we would like the help of more administrative entities, divers, or whatever can be called.
Thank you, Laura. I think that this is an interesting point raised, and indeed, oftentimes this misconception exists, coming also from an NGO organization. But nevertheless, the value of these initiatives illustrating, concepts of responsible citizenship, bringing on board citizens, because also there is another misconception that, okay, municipalities are in charge, for example, in many countries, of cleaning up the coast. And so we as citizens have nothing to do with it, while we are the ones in the first place that contributed to this ugly reality on the coastline. So actually it is a joint responsibility, and everyone needs to take their share of this responsibility. And because we're running out of time, I would like to quickly pass the floor to Josip to hear his thoughts and reflections on the topic.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Ignacio, perdona abans. Regarding to this, in my professional life and political life, I've seen, for me, the great misconception. First is from the citizens. You've mentioned the citizens, always there's an excuse to do nothing. Also is the responsibility of the public administration. And I think that because of this, public administration has been mesmerizing on great infrastructures to make the triage, to select and to separate each fraction of the waste management, when the real problem is to reduce, to prevent, to prevent, and at the end to change behaviors. It's much easier, very much easier. It's only about money, to construct a great facility to select than to change the behavior of the people. And I think that one of the misconceptions, and I've been in the Mediterranean, in Latin America, where I've been working also, is please bring technology, let's create new facilities to do that, when the real important thing is to change behaviors, to change that's what I said, the citizens, we are the real responsibles to that, and by consuming in different matter, we can change this above all. And for me, it's by two general means: communication, but you can only reach maybe half of the population, and the other is fiscal measures. You have to make people pay more for the items that are more unsustainable. I think that in some countries it's difficult, but we have to go to, in my opinion, to this. And later on, maybe I could explain in the second sentence how from its cities we can help in this regard.
Thank you very much. And here I would like to highlight indeed that it's not just about changing the production patterns, but it's also about changing the consumption patterns. And when it comes to that, citizen society at large has a great responsibility. I'm not sure if we will have the time to fully address the second question, because we are indeed running out of time, and we have about 4 minutes to wrap up the session. So I will give the floor to two of our panelists. So is there any one of you who would really love to share their thoughts on the last question? Because we don't have the time to have a full-blown answers from all the panelists. Please.
If no one more would like to, but if any other would like to, I give.
I think that since I don't see any hands raising, I think that you can go ahead, and with that we can also wrap up the second question. Yeah. Okay,
just to say that that's what I think, that in cities, for example, and municipalities, we can do a lot. And in fact, in cities where our role is helping in the transfer of knowledge. among cities and among citizens in projects like yours. How we can spread the results, the information, the communications, these videos. We need, as I said, we need to achieve to more people this multi-level governance, and we are willing to transfer from north to south to every city, to the citizens, to the civil society, and that's what MedCities can help can bring to this common objective.
Thank you very much. And I'm opening the floor for a couple of questions from the audience. And while seeing them on the chat, I would like to perhaps respond to one question that has been raised regarding the reusable cap. And maybe Ignacio actually can respond to that. The question is about whether we have considered reimbursement for bringing back the cap. So please.
Yes, the measure is working on this way. The customer, when they order the drink, they have to pay a deposit, and when they return the cap, the deposit will be returned to the customer. So they pay when they buy the drink, and they have the deposit return when they bring back the cap. So Dania, I don't know if it answered your question or it's...
Yeah, that was exactly the question actually, and it would be interesting to know what the user says about that, if there have been any impressions on that.
Yeah.
Understanding why they need to pay and get reimbursed afterwards.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of times the customers didn't return the cap because it's like a souvenir for him. So this deposit belongs to the beach bar owner. So it's I think it's an incentive for the beach bar owner, no, to participate, to be engaged in this measure.
Thank you, Ignacio. And if I may add, actually, this kind of approaches have been already tested in Central Europe, for example, in Germany. And there is a very famous case study on the Freiburg Cup, which has worked very well. And it has been implemented not in a coastal place, but in an inland place. And actually, I believe that driven also by the Single-Use Plastics Directive and the ambitiousness of the measures, that we are going to see more such kind of schemes for other types of items like water, PET bottles, or other single-use plastics. I see that we have a couple of questions. One question comes from Cristina Casara, who seems to be very pleased by our panel discussions. And her question is whether alternative solutions to plastic are affordable and accessible to communities. And perhaps also Ignacio can offer a response to that. But I would like also from our own experiences in working with the HoReCas to say that first of all, the primary measure that we are promoting is the total elimination of single-use plastics. And in that sense, the cost of such a solution is zero, basically. So it is favoring the finances of the business simply because they don't have to purchase this kind of items. And then when we are talking about moving on with alternatives, for example, let's say substituting the stirrers of the cocktails with, I don't know, cinnamon sticks, for example, this is definitely a much less costly alternative than the initial one. So definitely, in order to ensure endorsement of these measures, we are opting for alternatives that don't bring an additional financial burden, but to the businesses, and they're accessible to the local specificities, because obviously not all solutions are available to every single actor in every single country of the Mediterranean. I don't know if Ignacio would like to say a couple of words on this as well.
Yes, regarding the question about the alternative solution to plastics, I will share in the chat the work done by the no, I don't remember the name, but it's a UNEP study about the life cycle assessment of the alternative of the single-use plastics. And here you can find a study about these alternatives, which are regarding the life cycle assessment. So I don't know.
Okay.
Answer the question.
Perfect, Ignacio. Ignacio
Okay.
would be happy if you could share on the chat box
Yes.
the study that you're referring to. And then maybe the last question from the floor, it is directed to Josep. And the question is whether you have developed tools or guidelines on how to work with municipalities and how can NGOs support them in their work?
Well, we've been trying to systemize we are accumulating this knowledge by every project that we conduct. For example, there is the urban transport community, which is an Interreg project, has published a guideline to the best cases, best experiences in sustainable mobility. This is an example of how we can capitalize the knowledge, or making videos, or making new websites. On our own organization, we have been conducting 4 thematic cycle of sessions regarding waste management, energy, mobility, and environmental management. And apart from this, in some projects, in every project that we can, we try to involve civil society or NGOs in this regard. So we are learning from time to time, and we try to accumulate and capitalize all the knowledge. For example, I would like to highlight meturbantools.com, which is a website that is a platform to show a lot of experiences on best cases, mistakes in several areas of the urban ecology that you can visit. Is one of the 11 flagships initiatives of the Mediterranean Action Plan, Barcelona Convention, and I invite you to do it. We are the leaders of filling the platform in this regard.
Okay, thank you very much, Josep. I think that we can start concluding our session. So I would like to kindly invite the floor to write in the chat any take-home messages from today's from this last session. Meanwhile, I will try to respond to another question that was posted. And it reads as follows: that most of the litter is coming from land, and acting with municipalities is a good point. So the question was whether there is any experience with agriculture to promote less use of plastic. First of all, I would like to make one important point that we didn't have the time to address, and it was not addressed in the first session, that oftentimes in the Mediterranean, we talk about the importance of land-based sources, which is true. It is accepted that the land-based sources play a very important role, or the most important role, in many locations of the Mediterranean, but this is not the absolute truth, in the sense that there are areas where they have very intense maritime activities, where in fact the percentages when it comes to the different sources of litter items are reversed, and you have, for example, 80% of litter items coming from fisheries related or aquaculture related activities. So it is all depending on where is the sampling location. So obviously, if you're carrying out beach litter surveys in front of hotels or other land-based sources and pressures, obviously this is what you're gonna record. So this is one just misconception sometimes that has been circulated, and misleading sometimes also the typology of measures taken. And then with regards to the agriculture, I don't know if Josep afterwards wants to take the floor just to respond whether they have worked with that on with municipalities. The thing is that this so far, and actually I would like to bring into the discussion one latest development at European level, which is with regard to marine litter monitoring and the joint list of litter items, which allows now the clear recording of agriculture related items, because in the past, these were not recorded in such a way that could facilitate the identification of tailor-made measures. So this development, I believe that in particular for the Mediterranean, which there are many agricultural lands located at the coastal environment, will bring on the surface also the contribution of agriculture in the problem. So Josep, I don't know if you want to add just 2 sentences maximum because we're running out of time, and then to go and see the take-home messages of the session. Thank you.
Sincerely, I'm not sure what are you asking me.
The question was from the audience, whether municipalities have considering the inputs of agriculture to the problem of marine litter, and whether you have been working on that.
As far as I'm aware, we haven't been working. Maybe some of the staff could, prior to my arrival. I'm not aware of it. I've heard sometimes, but no, I'm not prepared to. I think there is not a general trend at all. I've known some little initiatives, for example, here in Catalonia, but I couldn't explain more. I think there is a real challenge to tackle still nowadays.
Tommy, can I?
Yeah, Ignacio, of course.
Okay, regarding the plastics and of the agriculture, in the case of Spain, for example, in Almeria, that it's in the south of Spain, there's a big problem with the plastics of the greenhouses. And the Spanish government will implement and the producers of the plastic are working in the extensive producer responsibility in the case of these plastics of the greenhouses that unfortunately end on the sea, near the Cabo de Gata MPA, that it's one of the other demos that plastic busters are working on. So there is initiatives in this way in the plastic of the agriculture, but it's there is not a lot of work. There is a lot of work to do.
Thank you, Ignacio, for these last words on the issue. And the time has come to wrap it up. I haven't seen any take-home messages on the chat. However, I will make an attempt to just provide you with a few ones. So basically, the essence of this session was demonstrating that the problem of marine litter has no one fits size solution all to the problem. This is one thing. The second thing has to do that all stakeholders play a role in generating the problem, and they have a responsibility towards addressing the problem. The third most important for me is that we all have to be very, very careful in not spreading the myths and misconceptions about not just the solutions, and we discussed the issue of biodegradable plastics, compostable, bio-based plastics, but also in terms of the actual problem. So there is a lot of data coming up, and a lot of data has been generated by different initiatives showing to us that the problem, yes, indeed, it requires a regional coordinated approach at basin level, but also the importance of localized actions tailored made to the specificities of the problem in each of the areas is very, very important and very relevant. So having in our minds figures about land-based versus sea-based sources, or the types of litter items. Yes, single-use plastics are found in many locations, but the Single-Use Plastics Directive refers also to fishing gear. It's not just about the tourism-related single-use plastics. So we need to keep all of that in our minds and to be very, very careful when proposing alternatives, because we don't want to end up again in a big mess. And lastly, when it comes to the options and the way forward, I would say that we shouldn't demonize plastics, but rather the message is we need to use plastics wisely, because there is a reason why this material has been used so much in the last decades. So wise use of plastics, doing more things with less materials, and breaking away from a throwaway society. I think that these are the main take-home messages of our session. And I would like to thank the audience for their patience and for bearing with us all this time. And with that, I would like to pass the floor to Anushka. And thank you all for being here with us today.
Thank you, Tommy, and all the speakers for a very, very thought-provoking session. So it certainly enlightened me in many, many ways. What's clear is that whether we're a scientist, a decision maker, or just part of civil society, each and every one of us has a personal responsibility to do something to reduce our contribution to the problem. I would just like to remind everyone that earlier on, a link to a quiz, a nice fun quiz for you to do, was placed just before the lunch and throughout the lunch. So please do go at some point and check out this quiz.